The coldest mafia king in Boston had rejected every woman who ever tried to reach him. Beauty, money, power, even peace between rival families meant nothing to Adrian Blackwell. Then one winter night, a frightened stranger appeared at his gates holding the only thing he believed he could never lose. Imagine finding an object valuable enough to erase every debt in your life, while knowing that keeping it could get you killed. Nora Bennett stood beneath falling snow with that choice in her hand, torn between survival and doing what was right. This is not only a story about danger or forbidden love. It is about what happens when loyalty enters a world built on fear, and when a man who trusts no one meets the one woman he cannot control. Stay until the end, like the video and comment where you are watching from, to understand why Nora Bennett had driven through a winter storm to place that ring in the hands of a man everyone feared the story had to return to the night before, when Adrian Blackwell still believed he had complete control over his world. Boston Harbor was nearly invisible beneath the snow. Wind swept across the seaport, carrying salt from the dark water and driving frozen needles against the glass towers lining the waterfront. The streets had emptied hours earlier. Restaurants had lowered their lights. Valets huddled beneath awnings, stamping warmth back into their feet, while black cars moved quietly through the storm. One of those cars stopped beneath the private entrance of the Harbor Crown Hotel. Adrian Blackwell stepped out before the driver could open his door. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a black suit with no hat and no gloves. Snow settled briefly in his dark hair before melting. The cold did not seem to touch him. Cole Mercer emerged from the other side of the vehicle and scanned the loading entrance. Cole had known Adrian since they were boys. He had seen him bleed without making a sound, bury men without looking away, and walk into rooms where everyone else had already decided he would die. That history had taught Cole to recognize the small signs Adrian never allowed others to see: the tightness in his shoulders, the pause before entering a building, the way his thumb moved across the dark stone of the ring on his right hand. Cole looked toward the hotel doors. "I still do not like this." Adrian continued walking. "You have not liked anything since 2018. In 2018, 3 men tried to poison you. Only one of them succeeded." Cole gave him a flat look. "You were unconscious for 2 days, and yet here I am." They entered through the service corridor rather than the main lobby. The hotel had been closed to ordinary guests on the upper floors. Adrian's people had secured the elevators, swept the meeting room, and checked the staff hours before his arrival. None of that eased Cole's suspicion. Grant Holloway had requested the meeting through an intermediary, claiming he wanted to discuss access to 2 freight terminals along the eastern port routes. The Blackwell organization controlled customs officers' shipping schedules and storage facilities from Boston to Providence. Holloway controlled smaller operations farther north, along with several men inside city government who had recently grown ambitious. For months, both sides had watched each other. No open war, no peace, only threats disguised as business. The elevator doors opened on the 21st floor. Adrian and Cole stepped into a silent corridor. 2 Blackwell guards stood near the entrance to the private suite. One nodded. "Room is clear." Cole looked at him. "You checked the service access twice." "The vents, yes. The floor above, no registered guests." Cole did not appear reassured. Adrian removed a small metal case from inside his coat and placed his thumb against its scanner. A red light appeared. He pressed the black stone of his signet ring against a narrow glass panel beneath the lock. The light turned green. The case opened. Inside was an encrypted drive no larger than a cigarette lighter. Cole stared at the ring. "You should move the recovery key." Adrian closed the case again. "My father trusted the ring. Your father trusted a lot of things." Adrian stopped. The 2 men stood alone in the quiet corridor while snow struck the windows at the far end. Cole chose his next words carefully. He trusted men who stood beside him in church. Adrian's face became still. Cole immediately knew he had gone too far. 12 years earlier, Charles Blackwell had been shot on the stone steps of St. Cecilia's Church. He had gone there to negotiate for the life of a woman he loved. The men waiting for him had promised an exchange. Instead, they placed 3 bullets in his chest while his son watched from a car across the street. The signet ring had been removed from Charles's hand at the hospital. Hours later, an attorney placed it in Adrian's palm. Adrian had worn it every day since. It was a heavy piece of dark platinum set with a black star sapphire. The Blackwell crest had been carved into the stone by hand nearly a century earlier. To outsiders, it looked like a symbol of inheritance. It was more dangerous than that. The inner band contained a microscopic encrypted pattern that connected to the Blackwell Emergency Reserve. The money itself sat behind layers of trusts holding companies and protected accounts. Nearly $180 million remained available if the organization lost access to its legal holdings. The ring alone could not transfer the funds. Adrian's biometric authorization was also required. But anyone capable of reading the pattern could identify the institution's account structures and financial routes supporting the Blackwell network. They could expose safe houses, shell corporations paid officials emergency identities, and men whose loyalty depended entirely on money. The ring was not simply a key. It was a map of every door the Blackwells had hidden. Adrian looked at Cole. "Are you finished?" Cole exhaled. For now. They entered the suite. The lights were low. A long dining table had been set for 6, though no food had been served. Crystal glasses waited beside unopened bottles of whiskey. Beyond the windows, Boston Harbor disappeared into white darkness. No one was there. Cole reached beneath his coat. Adrian raised one hand. A phone sat alone at the center of the table. It began to ring. The sound was small, almost delicate, yet it filled the room. Cole whispered, "Do not answer it." Adrian walked toward the table. "Then why did we come?" He picked up the phone and placed it against his ear. For several seconds there was only quiet breathing. Then Grant Holloway spoke. "You still wear your father's mistakes on your hand." Adrian's eyes lowered to the ring. "Where are you, Grant? Close enough to see whether you have learned anything since Charles died." The lights went out. Cole moved first. He pulled Adrian toward the floor as gunfire tore through the wall behind them. Glass shattered. Bullets punched through the dining table and sent crystal fragments across the carpet. Adrian rolled behind a marble service counter and drew his weapon. Another burst came from the adjoining suite. Cole fired twice toward the muzzle flash. Someone screamed. The emergency lights flickered red. Adrian glanced toward the private exit. 2 men in dark clothing entered through the service door, both carrying suppressed rifles. The first barely crossed the threshold before Adrian shot him through the chest. The second dropped behind the wall and returned fire. Cole shouted kitchen access. They moved through the connecting door as bullets struck the marble behind them. The hotel kitchen was dark except for thin strips of emergency lighting near the floor. Stainless steel counters reflected red light. Pots hung above the center station, trembling from the distant gunfire. A man stepped from behind the freezer. Adrian caught the rifle before it could rise and drove the attacker backward into a metal shelf. The shelf collapsed. Trays and glass containers crashed across the tile. The attacker struck Adrian in the ribs. Adrian responded with an elbow to the throat. The man staggered, choking. Adrian seized the back of his head and slammed it against the edge of the counter. Once. Twice. The man fell. Cole reached the loading corridor and fired toward another figure near the stairwell. "Move!" Adrian followed him through the rear kitchen door. The loading dock opened onto a narrow service lane behind the hotel. Snow blew sideways beneath the security lights. Their armored vehicle waited 20 yards away with its engine running. Then 2 black sport utility vehicles entered from opposite ends of the lane. Cole swore. The first vehicle accelerated toward them, its rear window lowered. Gunfire ripped across the loading area. Adrian pulled Cole behind a concrete support as bullets tore sparks from the pavement. Their driver opened his door and fired back through the storm. A round struck the windshield. The glass bloomed white. Cole pressed a hand to his earpiece. "North exit is blocked. We need the car here. It cannot reach us. Then we take theirs." Adrian stepped from cover and fired toward the approaching vehicle. One round struck the driver. The sport utility vehicle swerved and crashed into a row of steel trash containers. The passenger door opened. A large man in a dark coat came out firing. Adrian emptied the remaining rounds in his magazine, then moved before Cole could stop him. The attacker's weapon clicked empty. Adrian reached him first. They collided beside the drainage channel. The man drove Adrian against the side of the vehicle. Metal shook beneath the impact. Adrian struck him across the jaw, but the attacker caught his wrist and slammed his hand against the hood. Pain shot through Adrian's fingers. The ring loosened. Neither man noticed. The attacker reached inside his coat for a knife. Adrian trapped his arm, twisted it behind his back, and forced him face first against the vehicle. The knife fell into the snow. The man kicked backward and caught Adrian's knee. Adrian staggered. The attacker turned and charged. They hit the ground beside the drain. Adrian felt the man's hands close around his throat. Snow pressed against the back of his head. The harbor wind cut through his coat. Above him, the attacker's face twisted with effort. Adrian drove his thumb into the man's wounded eye. The grip around his throat broke. He rolled them over, seized the fallen knife, and buried it beneath the man's ribs. The attacker went still. Adrian pushed himself upright. Something struck the pavement beside his hand with a soft metallic sound. The ring bounced once. It rolled through the dirty snow, struck the edge of the drainage channel, and disappeared beneath a ridge of frozen slush. Cole reached him and pulled him toward the armored car. "We are leaving." Adrian looked back, but another burst of gunfire struck the vehicle behind them. Cole shoved him into the rear seat. The driver accelerated before the door fully closed. The car crashed through a folding security barrier and turned onto the main road. Police sirens rose somewhere beyond the hotel. Inside the armored cabin, Adrian leaned back and checked the bruising across his hand. His fingers were bare. He stared at them. The streetlights moved across his face, one after another. Cole saw the change in him. "What is it?" Adrian looked toward the rear window. "The ring." Cole followed his gaze as if he might somehow see it lying in the distance. "Are you certain?" Adrian held up his hand. Cole closed his eyes for 1 second. "We cannot go back." Adrian reached for the door handle. Cole caught his arm. "Police are already there. Holloway's men may still be there. You go back now and this entire attack becomes worth it. That ring contains the recovery pattern." "I know what it contains. You do not know what it means." Cole's grip tightened. "I know exactly what it means. I also know Charles Blackwell did not raise you so you could die in an alley chasing a piece of metal." Adrian's expression turned dangerous. "Do not speak for my father. Then stop trying to join him." The two men stared at each other in the moving car. Finally, Adrian released the handle. He pulled out his phone and called the head of security. "Lock every account connected to the reserve. Move the emergency files. I want every camera between the Harbor Crown and Northern Avenue copied before the police can touch them." He made another call. "Send teams to the alley, quietly. Search every drain roof vehicle and trash container." A third call. "Contact every broker, fence pawn dealer, and private collector in the city. If the ring appears, I hear about it first." Cole watched him. Sending that many people tells Holloway exactly how important it is. Adrian looked out at the storm. He already knows. By the time Blackwell men returned to the service lane, police had sealed the area. They searched after the authorities left. They found blood shell casings, a broken knife, and tire marks disappearing beneath new snow. They did not find the ring. 3 hours later, several miles away, Nora Bennett sat alone beneath the fluorescent lights of Bell and Finch Provenance Archive. The office occupied the second floor above a closed furniture shop in South Boston. Its narrow rooms smelled of dust paper and old wood. Shelves leaned beneath the weight of auction catalogs. Framed maps covered the walls. Objects waiting to be identified rested beneath white cloth on long tables. Nora preferred the building after everyone had gone home. Old things did not ask questions. They did not demand explanations for late payments. They did not speak more softly when she mentioned her father. That night she was studying a silver communion cup believed to have come from a church in Salem. The owner insisted it dated to the early 18th century. Nora had already found evidence that the engraving had been added 200 years later. She adjusted the lamp and examined the base through a magnifying lens. Her phone vibrated beside her. The number on the screen was familiar. She let it ring. It stopped. A moment later, a voicemail appeared. Nora continued working, but the words on the page blurred. She pressed play. A man's voice filled the quiet office. "Miss Bennett, this is another attempt to contact you regarding the outstanding balance connected to the treatment of Robert Bennett. Unless payment arrangements are made immediately, the account may be referred for legal recovery. That process could include action against the remaining property attached to the estate." Nora ended the message. For a long time she did not move. A framed photograph stood on the corner of her desk. In it, her father sat on the steps of their small house, holding a cup of coffee and smiling at the camera. He had lost most of his hair by then. His face was thinner than she remembered. Still, he had smiled, as if illness were an inconvenience he planned to defeat through stubbornness alone. Nora touched the edge of the frame. "I'm trying, Dad." Her supervisor appeared in the doorway, startling her. Martin Finch was already wearing his coat. "You are still here. I wanted to finish the communion piece. It can wait until morning." Nora glanced at the stack of files beside her. "I thought we were behind." "We are." He entered the office and placed an envelope on her desk. Nora looked at it but did not touch it. "What is this, a revised schedule?" Her stomach tightened. Martin avoided her eyes. "Two auction houses moved their authentication work to New York. We cannot keep everyone at full hours." "How many hours?" 24 a week starting Monday. Nora stared at him. "That barely covers rent." "I know. My father's house is already under a claim." "I know." She hated the sympathy in his voice more than she would have hated cruelty. Martin placed his hand on the back of the chair. "You are the best researcher here. When work returns, your hours return. When will that be?" He had no answer. Nora folded the schedule and placed it inside her bag. At 1 in the morning, she turned off the final light and locked the archive behind her. The snow had grown heavier. Her car sat in a public garage near the seaport because the fuel gauge had been resting below empty since afternoon. She could have taken the train directly home, but she needed the car for work the next morning. She began the long walk toward the garage, shoulders raised against the wind. Boston looked unfamiliar beneath the storm. Street signs disappeared behind white air. Tire tracks vanished within minutes. Light from the towers reflected across untouched snow. Nora passed the Harbor Crown Hotel and noticed yellow police tape moving near the loading lane. The officers were gone. Dark stains marked the pavement. Broken glass glittered beneath the security lamps. She should have kept walking. Instead, a faint gleam near the drainage channel caught her eye. Nora stopped. Snow gathered across her coat as she stepped closer. She crouched and brushed aside a layer of frozen slush. Her fingers touched metal. The object was heavier than she expected. She lifted it toward the light. A dark platinum ring rested in her palm. The stone appeared black at first, but when she turned it, a narrow silver star moved across its surface, star sapphire. The crest had been carved by hand. A shield, a crown, two birds facing opposite directions. Nora rubbed away the remaining snow. Tiny marks covered the inner band. Not decorative marks, something more precise. Her phone vibrated again. Another collection notice. Nora looked at the ring. Even before a formal appraisal, she understood enough to know it was valuable. The platinum alone could cover several months of payments. The stone might cover more. If the provenance matched the workmanship, a private collector could pay enough to erase every debt her father had left behind. She closed her hand around it. For the first time in months, she imagined answering the phone without fear. She imagined opening the front door of her father's house and knowing no bank could take it. She imagined sleeping for an entire night. The thought frightened her because of how badly she wanted it. Nora searched the snow for a wallet, a broken chain, or anything that might identify the owner. There was nothing, only blood tire tracks and the quiet evidence that something violent had happened there. She slipped the ring into the deepest pocket of her coat and walked away. The following morning, Nora drove to a narrow storefront in Chelsea with metal bars across its windows. The sign above the door read Keller Precious Metals and Estate Purchases. Sam Keller had worked with Bell and Finch for years. He bought damaged jewelry, inherited silver, and objects whose owners preferred cash to paperwork. He was not a criminal, though he knew enough criminals to recognize when a transaction should never happen. A bell sounded as Nora entered. Sam looked up from his desk. "You look terrible." "Good morning to you, too. You need coffee. I need an appraisal. That usually means you need coffee and money." Nora removed the ring from her pocket and placed it on the glass counter. Sam's expression changed before the metal stopped moving. He stepped backward. "Put that away." Nora frowned. "You have not even looked at it. I have seen enough." "Is it stolen?" Sam moved toward that front door and turned the lock. The click sounded unusually loud. Nora stared at him. "Sam, where did you get it?" "I found it. We're near the harbor." He dragged one hand across his mouth. "You cannot be here with that." "What is it?" Sam looked toward the covered windows, then lowered his voice. "That is a Blackwell ring." Nora waited. The name meant something, though she could not immediately place it. Sam leaned closer without touching the counter. Adrian Blackwell. Recognition arrived with a cold weight. Nora had seen the name in newspapers, shipping investigations, political donations, a nightclub shooting in which every witness later changed their story. She looked down at the ring. "You are serious. I have never been more serious. How do you know it belongs to him?" "That crest has belonged to the Blackwell family for 4 generations. Charles Blackwell wore that ring the night he was killed. His son has worn it ever since." Nora swallowed. "I can take it to the police." Sam laughed once without humor. "The police will call him before you finish the paperwork. Then I leave it here." "No, Sam, no. You walk out of this shop with that ring. You said it was dangerous. It is dangerous for whoever has it." He pointed toward her coat pocket. "If Blackwell lost it, his people are turning Boston inside out. Holloway's people are doing the same. Every dealer in the city will hear about it by tonight." Nora picked up the ring. "What am I supposed to do? Throw it into the harbor. And if someone saw me find it?" Sam's silence answered her. Nora felt the room grow smaller. "Can I return it? You can try. To Adrian Blackwell. I did not say it was a good idea. Which choice keeps me alive?" Sam looked at her with genuine pity. "Neither. One just gives you a chance." Nora left the shop with the ring hidden in her coat. She sat inside her car while snow gathered across the windshield. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from the collection agency. On impulse, she opened the Bell and Finch archive database and entered a description of the crest. A photograph appeared. Charles Blackwell stood outside a church beside a younger Adrian. The same ring rested on Charles's hand. Adrian could not have been more than 20. He was not smiling. Neither was Nora in the final photograph taken beside her father's hospital bed. She knew that expression. It belonged to someone standing close to death while pretending he could still bargain with it. Nora closed the image. She placed the ring on the passenger seat. For several minutes she stared at it. Then she entered an address in Marblehead into her navigation system. The drive would take less than an hour. She told herself that returning the ring would end the matter. She started the engine and pulled away from the curb. Across the street, a black sport utility vehicle turned on its headlights. It waited until Nora reached the intersection. Then it followed her north. The black vehicle remained behind Nora for the next 12 miles. At first, she told herself it was coincidence. The highway was nearly empty, but not completely. Other headlights appeared through the snow past her, then disappeared into the white distance. The black vehicle did neither. It stayed far enough back to seem harmless and close enough to remain visible every time she checked the mirror. Nora tightened both hands around the steering wheel. The ring rested inside her coat pocket, its weight pressing against her ribs whenever she breathed. She considered calling the police. Then she remembered Sam's warning. The police will call him before you finish the paperwork. Her navigation system directed her away from the highway and onto a narrow coastal road. The houses became larger. Stone walls rose beside the road. Iron gates appeared between old trees burdened with snow. The black vehicle followed. Nora's mouth went dry. She pressed harder on the accelerator. Her old sedan protested as it climbed the final hill. The engine rattled. The heater released air that was only slightly warmer than the storm outside. Then the Blackwell estate appeared. 10-foot stone walls surrounded several acres of frozen land. Security cameras turned above the entrance. Beyond the gates, a long drive disappeared through rows of bare trees toward a mansion overlooking the Atlantic. Nora stopped beside the guardhouse. The black vehicle slowed behind her. Before it reached the entrance, 2 armed guards stepped into the road. The vehicle continued past without stopping. Nora watched it disappear around the curve. One of the guards approached her window. He wore a dark wool coat over a tailored suit. A faint scar crossed his chin. "State your business." Nora lowered the window several inches. Snow blew into the car. "I need to speak with Adrian Blackwell." The guard stared at her. "Turn around. I have something that belongs to him. Mr. Blackwell does not receive visitors. I do not want to visit him." The second guard moved closer. Nora reached slowly into her coat. Both men shifted their hands toward their weapons. She froze. "I am taking something out of my pocket." "Use 2 fingers," the first guard said. Nora obeyed. She raised the ring into the narrow space between the window and the frame. The guard's expression changed. He leaned closer, his eyes fixed on the crest. "Where did you get that I found it? Where near the harbor crown?" The second guard touched his earpiece. His voice became quiet and urgent. Nora could not understand everything he said, but she heard the words, ring and woman. The first guard opened her door. "Step out of the vehicle." Her heart jumped. "I came here to return it. Step out." Nora placed the ring back in her pocket and climbed from the car. The wind struck her face. One guard searched her coat while the other inspected the vehicle. They found her phone wallet archive identification card and a tire iron beneath the driver's seat. The first guard looked at her identification. "Nora Bennett." "Yes." "Is anyone expecting you?" "No. Did anyone follow you?" Nora looked toward the road. There was a black vehicle behind me. The 2 guards exchanged a glance. "What kind, large?" "Tinted windows." I could not see the plate. The guard touched his earpiece again. The iron gates opened. Nora expected to be told to drive through. Instead, one guard took her keys and escorted her into a waiting security vehicle. The other remained with her sedan. As they moved up the long drive, Nora looked back. The gates closed behind them with a sound like a vault sealing shut. The mansion stood above the coastline, built from dark gray stone. It had tall windows, steep roofs, and several wings connected by covered passages. The sea beyond it was restless and nearly black. Men moved near the entrance. Some wore suits. Others wore tactical clothing and carried rifles. Nora counted 6 before the vehicle stopped. A woman in her 60s waited inside the front hall. Her silver hair was tied neatly at the back of her head. She introduced herself as Evelyn Price and searched Nora again with more courtesy than the guards had shown. "I apologize," Evelyn said. "You do not sound sorry. I am sorry that it is necessary. That is different." A faint expression touched Evelyn's face. It might have been approval. She led Nora through a hall lined with dark portraits and into a large study. "Wait here." The door closed. Nora stood alone. A fire burned in a stone fireplace. Bookshelves covered 2 walls. The windows overlooked the ocean where waves broke against cliffs beneath the snow. Everything in the room looked expensive, but nothing felt warm. A black desk stood near the windows. Behind it, a man faced the sea. Nora did not hear him turn. She only felt the room change. Adrian Blackwell looked younger than she expected and more dangerous than the photograph suggested. His dark hair was still damp from melted snow. A bruise shadowed one side of his jaw. The knuckles of his right hand were split. His eyes moved over her once, not slowly, not rudely, with the precision of someone searching for weapons that could not be seen. "You have my property." His voice was calm. That frightened her more than anger would have. Nora reached into her coat and removed the ring. She crossed the room and placed it on the desk. "I found it last night." Adrian did not look down. "Where behind the Harbor Crown Hotel, near the drainage channel." "Who else saw it?" "A dealer named Sam Keller." "What did he do?" "He told me to leave." "Did he photograph it?" "No." "Did he call anyone not while I was there?" Adrian stepped closer to the desk. His gaze remained on Nora. "Why did you take it to him? I needed an appraisal. You intended to sell it." Nora felt heat rise into her face. "For about 10 minutes, yes." Something sharpened in his expression. She continued before he could speak. "I have debt. A lot of it. I knew the ring was valuable before I knew who it belonged to. And after you knew, I brought it here. That does not answer the question." Nora forced herself to meet his eyes. "After I knew I wanted it out of my life." Adrian finally looked at the ring. He picked it up and turned it beneath the light. His thumb moved over the inner band. The tension in his shoulders eased by a fraction. Then it returned. He placed the ring on his finger. Nora took one step backward. "So that is everything?" "No." "I returned it." "Yes, I did not tell anyone. You showed it to Keller. He already knew what it was." "That is not the same thing as silence." Nora stared at him. "I did the right thing. In ordinary circumstances, this is not ordinary." Adrian looked at her as if the question required no answer. A man entered without knocking. He was broad-shouldered with light brown hair and a tired face that seemed built for suspicion. He carried a tablet. "Cole Mercer," he said. Nora did not offer her hand. Cole placed the tablet on the desk. "We pulled city traffic footage." He touched the screen. A grainy image appeared. Nora saw herself crouched near the drainage channel. The timestamp showed 1:37 in the morning. Cole moved to the next image. It showed her leaving Sam Keller's shop. Her stomach tightened. "How did you get those the same way Holloway did?" Cole said. Nora looked at Adrian. "Who is Holloway?" "Grant Holloway controls the organization that attacked us last night. The men who lost the ring. The men who tried to take it." Cole enlarged another image. A black sport utility vehicle sat across from Keller's shop. Nora recognized it immediately. "That followed me." Adrian's attention shifted to her. "How long from Chelsea to the road near your gate?" Cole cursed quietly. Nora looked toward the door. "They know I came here." "They know your vehicle came here," Cole said. "They may not have your name yet. My registration has my address." Adrian's face became unreadable. Cole looked at him. "I already sent a team." Nora's pulse began to race. "A team where to your apartment," Adrian said. "You sent armed men to my home to secure it. There is nothing there except my clothes. If Holloway's men arrive first, they will not care." Nora turned toward the door. "I need to leave." Adrian moved between her and the exit. The motion was quiet but final. "Move? No. You have your ring. This is no longer about the ring. It is entirely about the ring. Holloway saw you take it. He saw you visit Keller. He followed you here. If you leave, he will take you. I will go to the police. Holloway owns people inside the department. Then I will leave Massachusetts. He will watch the airport, the train stations, and every highway leaving the state." Nora's voice rose. "You do not know that. I do." The certainty in his tone stopped her. She looked from Adrian to Cole. Neither man appeared uncertain. Nora wrapped her arms around herself. "What happens if they find me?" Adrian answered without softening the truth. "They will ask where the ring is. I will tell them I returned it. They will not believe you, and when they do, they will kill you because you removed their leverage." The fire cracked behind her. Nora suddenly became aware of every locked gate she had passed, every armed man in the hall, every mile between the estate and the nearest ordinary street. "I want money," she said. Cole's eyebrows rose. Adrian did not react. Nora continued. "Enough to leave. A new identification. A car they cannot trace. Whatever people like you use when you disappear. You would not reach the state line. You keep saying that as if I have another option. You do. What you stay here." Nora laughed once. The sound came out thin and frightened. "In the house of a man I met 5 minutes ago. In the most secure property on the North Shore. Those are not the same thing. They are today." Adrian walked to the desk and pressed a button beneath it. A quiet click came from the doors. Nora looked toward them. "Did you lock me in? I closed the room." That is a careful way to say yes. Adrian pressed the button again. The doors unlocked. He stepped aside. "You may leave." Nora stared at the open doorway. Beyond it, 2 armed guards stood in the hall. Adrian spoke behind her. "If you cross the front gate, my protection ends there." Nora turned. "That is not a choice. It is the only honest one I can give you." She hated him for saying it calmly. She hated the men who had followed her. She hated Sam for being right. Most of all, she hated the ring for sitting so naturally on Adrian's hand as if it had not dismantled her life in less than a day. "How long? 48 hours, Adrian said. "Cole will identify the men who followed you and arrange a secure route out of the city." Cole looked at Adrian but said nothing. Nora noticed. "You do not believe that?" Cole folded his arms. "I believe plans change. Then I want conditions." Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You are in no position to negotiate. I returned something worth more than my life. That gives me a position." Cole looked almost amused. Adrian did not. Nora counted on her fingers. "No one enters my room without permission. I keep my phone. I contact my employer myself. No one touches my bank accounts, my father's house, or anything else connected to my name. I receive updates about the threat. Real updates, not whatever version you decide will keep me quiet." Adrian watched her for several seconds. "Agreed." Cole turned toward him. "Adrian." He ignored him. Nora lowered her hand. "And I am not wearing whatever expensive costume your staff brings me." For the first time, something almost human crossed Adrian's face. "You may wear whatever you want. I want my own clothes. Your apartment is being searched. For protection, for evidence that someone entered before my men arrived." Nora absorbed that. Adrian continued. "You will have your belongings tonight." She looked toward the open doors. "I want them closed from the inside. You will have a key. And the guards. They remain outside." "That sounds like a prison. A prison keeps you from leaving." Nora glanced toward the snow beyond the windows. "This house does that very well." Adrian held her gaze. "This house is keeping them from entering." Evelyn returned and escorted Nora to the east wing. The guest room was larger than Nora's entire apartment. A fire burned beside a sitting area. Fresh clothes filled an open wardrobe. White roses stood in a crystal vase near the windows. Nora stared at them. "Do women usually arrive here without luggage?" Evelyn adjusted the curtains. "Some arrive with expectations, and leave disappointed usually." Nora removed her coat. "I only want jeans and a sweater. I will have them brought, and a lock." Evelyn handed her a brass key. Nora tested it twice after the older woman left. The lock worked. It did not make her feel safe. Hours passed. Nora called Martin Finch and said there had been a family emergency. The lie sounded weak, but he accepted it. Her clothes arrived shortly after dark. So did her laptop, several books, and the framed photograph of her father from her desk. Someone had entered the archive to collect it. Nora placed the photograph beside the bed. She wondered whether Adrian had ordered it taken or whether Evelyn had noticed it among her belongings. Dinner arrived on a silver tray. Nora barely touched it. Near midnight, she heard voices in the hallway. She opened the door. Cole stood with one of the guards. He looked at her. "You should be asleep. You should stop standing outside my room. I am not here for you. That is comforting." Cole dismissed the guard with a glance. Then he entered the room without waiting. Nora blocked his path. "One of my conditions." He stopped. "May I come in?" No, Cole almost smiled. "You are either very brave or very bad at understanding danger." "I understand danger. I drove here. That may prove the opposite." He studied her face. "Did Holloway pay you?" Nora stared at him. "To do what? Find the ring, bring it here, gain access to the estate." "If I worked for Holloway, why would I hand Adrian the object he wanted to make us trust you?" "That is a complicated plan for someone whose greatest crime is 3 unpaid parking tickets. We checked. There are 4. Nora folded her arms. "Then arrest me." Cole's expression hardened. "I do not think you are funny. I do not think you are subtle." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Cole lowered his voice. "Adrian has enemies because he assumes responsibility for anything placed under his protection. Holloway knows that. If you are part of a plan to exploit him, I will find out." Nora looked past him toward the hall. "I did not ask for his protection. No one ever does." Cole walked away. The next day, Nora saw Adrian only from a distance. He moved through the estate with men around him, issuing quiet orders, answering calls, and studying security footage. He never raised his voice. He did not need to. Everyone changed direction when he entered a room. By evening, the silence of the guest wing had become unbearable. Nora left her room and followed the smell of coffee toward the kitchen. She found Adrian alone at the long wooden table. His suit jacket rested across a chair. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled to his elbows. Blood marked a cloth wrapped around his right hand. He held a needle in his left. Nora stopped in the doorway. "What happened?" He looked up. "Nothing. That is blood. It usually is." She crossed the room and took the needle from him. Adrian watched her. "What are you doing preventing an infection?" "I have stitched wounds before." Nora examined the uneven puncture he had already made. "That does not mean you have done it well." She found antiseptic in an open medical kit and cleaned the cut. Adrian did not flinch. His hand was warm and heavily scarred. Nora threaded the needle. "Does everything in your life end in blood?" "Not everything." What does not his eyes lifted to hers? For a second, the cold control disappeared. He looked tired. Not physically tired. Older than that. Then footsteps sounded in the corridor. Cole entered holding a phone. His face erased the quiet from the room. Sam Keller is missing. Nora released Adrian's hand. What, his shop was open when our men arrived. The front window was broken. There was blood behind the counter. Nora's phone vibrated in her pocket. All three of them looked toward it. She pulled it out. An unknown number had sent a photograph. Sam sat tied to a chair beneath a hanging light. Blood covered one side of his face. A message appeared below the image. "Bring us the ring, Nora Bennett." Adrian took the phone from her hand. The softness she had seen in him vanished. He looked at Cole. "Lock the estate." Heavy mechanisms engaged throughout the house. Doors sealed. Security lights rose beyond the windows. Nora stared at Sam's bloodied face while the ocean struck the cliffs below, and for the first time she understood that the gates had not closed to keep her inside. They had closed because the war had finally learned her name. The war had learned Nora's name, and Sam Keller was paying the price for it. She stood in Adrian's kitchen with the photograph open on her phone, staring at the blood running from Sam's temple. The hanging light above him cast a hard circle across the floor. Everything beyond that circle disappeared into darkness. Adrian enlarged the image with 2 fingers. Cole moved beside him. No visible windows, concrete walls, industrial power line above the chair. Nora reached for the phone. "We have to find him." Adrian kept it out of her reach. "We have to determine whether he is still alive. He was alive when they took the picture. That does not tell us when the picture was taken." Nora's fear turned sharp. "So that is it, you decide he may already be dead and no one goes looking?" Adrian's eyes lifted to hers. "I decide whether sending men into an obvious trap saves him or creates more bodies. He helped me, he recognized my ring, he warned me, and Holloway punished him for it." Nora stepped closer. "Because of me?" "No." The answer came harder than she expected. Adrian placed the phone on the table. "Because of me." The room went quiet. Cole looked at him but said nothing. Adrian continued. "Holloway did not take Keller because you entered his shop. He took him because I lost something powerful enough to start a war. You were simply the person who found it." Nora stared at him. It was the first time Adrian had spoken about the danger without making it sound like her mistake. That did not make Sam any safer. She picked up the phone and studied the picture again. Sam's wrists were tied behind the chair. His head leaned to one side. A metal pipe ran along the wall above him. Behind his shoulder hung a framed document with faded blue lettering. Nora brought the screen closer. "Can you improve the image?" Cole took the phone. "What are you looking at? The frame behind him. It is too blurred." "Try." Cole sent the photograph to the security system. Seconds later, it appeared on a large screen near the kitchen entrance. The image sharpened. Nora moved toward it. The document inside the frame was stained and partly hidden behind Sam's shoulder, but she could make out the edge of a circular seal. A ship, 3 waves, a name written beneath them. Mercer Atlantic Storage. Cole frowned. That company has not existed in years, since 1998, Nora said. Both men looked at her. She pointed at the frame. "We cataloged shipping records from their bankruptcy last spring. They owned warehouses along Chelsea Creek and one cold storage building near the old salt terminal." Adrian examined the image. "It could be decoration." "No." Nora stepped closer to the screen. "The wall is covered in grime, but the frame is clean. Look at the corners. Someone wiped it before hanging it." Cole saw it then. "A location marker. A message," Nora said. "They want us to find him." Adrian's expression hardened. "Which means they control the building." Nora turned toward him. "It also means Sam may still be alive." Adrian looked at Cole. "How many Blackwell properties are within 5 minutes of Chelsea Creek 2? 1 on Everett Avenue, 1 near the produce terminal. Send 12 men, no marked vehicles, thermal scan before entry." Cole began making calls. Nora followed him with her eyes. Adrian reached for the medical kit and began wrapping his unfinished hand. "You found the location in less than 3 minutes. It was my job. You authenticate antiques. I research where things came from. Objects leave trails. So do people." Adrian tied the bandage. "You may have saved his life. Do not say that until he is standing here." 40 minutes passed. Nora remained in the kitchen because no one would let her near the security room. She walked from the table to the windows and back again. Outside, guards crossed the snow beneath white security lights. The ocean beyond them disappeared into darkness. Adrian stayed nearby. He answered calls in a low voice but did not tell her what was happening. Finally, Cole entered. His coat was open. Snow melted across his shoulders. We found Keller. Nora stopped breathing. Alive. Her knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the table. Cole continued. He has a fractured wrist, 2 broken ribs, and a cut above his eye. The doctors are treating him at one of our clinics. Can I speak to him when he wakes? Nora closed her eyes. Relief arrived with enough force to hurt. Adrian stood across from her, watching quietly. She opened her eyes. Thank you. His expression did not change. You found him. You sent the men. That was the easy part. For once, Nora did not argue. The following morning, the estate felt different. The guards were still present. Doors still required security codes. Cameras still followed movement across the grounds. But Nora no longer felt entirely helpless inside the walls. She had seen something Adrian's men had missed. Her knowledge had mattered. Sam was alive because she had refused to accept the photograph as nothing more than a threat. She spent most of the day in the library with her laptop searching old property records connected to Grant Holloway. Adrian had not asked her to help, but he had not stopped her. Near noon, a message arrived from the collection agency handling her father's medical debt. Nora opened it without thinking. The subject line read, "Account satisfied." She read the message twice. The remaining balance had been paid in full through an anonymous trust. All collection activity had ended. The claim against her father's house had been released. Nora's hands began to shake. She knew immediately who had done it. Adrian was in his office with 3 men when she entered. Cole stood near the fireplace. 2 captains sat across from Adrian's desk studying maps of the harbor. Adrian looked up. Nora, everyone out. One captain turned toward her with open disbelief. Adrian did not. He closed the folder in front of him. Leave us. The men obeyed. Cole remained. Nora pointed toward the door. You too. Cole looked at Adrian. Adrian nodded once. When the door closed, Nora placed her phone on the desk. What did you do? Adrian glanced at the message. I removed a vulnerability. That was my debt. It was being used to threaten you. It was still mine. Now it is gone. Nora stared at him. He truly did not understand. My father was sick for 4 years. Every bill had his name on it. Every notice reminded me of a day I could not save him. Adrian rose slowly. That is exactly why I paid it. You did not pay it for him. No, you paid it because you wanted the problem removed. Yes. The honesty made her angrier. You treat people like damaged property. You find the weakness, repair it, and expect gratitude. I expected you to be safe. You expected me to accept a decision you made about my life. Adrian came around the desk. It was money. To you. His jaw tightened. Nora continued. To me, it was the last responsibility I carried for my father. I hated it. I feared it. Some nights I thought it would destroy me. But it was mine to face. You would rather remain in debt. I would rather be asked. Adrian stopped several feet from her. No one spoke to him this way. Nora could see that in the stillness of his face. She could also see the moment anger gave way to thought. In my world, he said, debt is leverage. In mine, being owned is worse. I do not own you. You sent men into my apartment. You searched my past. You paid my bills. You decide when I can leave this house. I am keeping you alive. And every time I object, you use that sentence to end the conversation. Adrian looked toward the windows. The sea moved beyond the glass dark beneath the winter sky. When he faced her again, something in him had shifted. I should have asked. Nora said nothing. The words sounded unnatural in his voice, as if apology were a language he understood but had never spoken. He continued. I believed removing the debt would give you one less reason to be afraid. It gave me another. Adrian absorbed that. I can reverse the payment. No. The collection agency will only create another mess. Then tell me what corrects this. You cannot correct everything with a transaction. His eyes held hers. What do you want from me, consent? The words settled between them. Nora picked up her phone and walked toward the door. Behind her, Adrian said, I am sorry. She stopped. He did not say it again. He did not soften it with an explanation. Nora looked back. Adrian stood alone beside the desk, a man who could command hundreds and had no idea how to ask one woman for forgiveness. She left without answering. That evening, she found the estate chapel by accident. It occupied a quiet room near the oldest wing of the house. There were no religious statues, only dark wooden benches, a simple altar, and stained glass windows that turned the falling snow blue. A brass plaque had been fixed to the wall. Charles William Blackwell, beloved father. Nora read the dates. He had died at 49. "You found him." Adrian's voice came from the doorway. Nora turned. He had removed his jacket and tie. The open collar of his shirt made him appear less distant, though nothing about him was relaxed. This was his chapel. My mother had it built after he died. Nora looked at the plaque. "Sam told me your father was wearing the ring the night he was killed." Adrian entered. "He wore it every day, like you." "Yes." He sat on the final bench. Nora remained standing. For several seconds only the storm moved. Then Adrian spoke. "My father loved a woman named Elizabeth Crane." Nora sat at the opposite end of the bench. "Your mother, no." The answer surprised her. Adrian looked toward the altar. My parents had lived separately for years. Elizabeth was the only person who made him believe he could leave the organization. What happened, Holloway's father took her. Nora's chest tightened. They demanded a meeting at St. Cecilia's church. My father believed he could exchange territory for her life. "And you went with him." "I was in the car across the street." Adrian's hand closed slowly. They made him wait on the steps. Then they brought out her necklace. Nora understood before he continued. She was already dead. For 6 hours. The words contained no emotion. That absence revealed more than grief would have. "My father still walked toward them," Adrian said. "He believed there might be another prisoner, another reason, something he could save. They shot him 3 times. Nora looked at Adrian's bare hand. The ring had been removed and placed on the altar. I watched him fall. Adrian. He believed love made him brave. Maybe it did. His eyes turned cold. It made him predictable. No, the men who killed him chose cruelty. That belongs to them. They knew he would come. That does not make loving her the mistake. It gave them leverage." Nora studied him. "You have spent 12 years blaming love because blaming the killers was not enough." Adrian looked at her sharply. She did not look away. "If love killed him," she continued, "then you can protect yourself by never loving anyone. You can control that." His silence confirmed it. Nora looked toward the ring. "But if cruel men killed him, then there was never anything he could have done to deserve it." Adrian's face tightened. "That is not better. No." The stained glass cast blue light across his hands. "It is only true." The next afternoon, Adrian came to Nora's room carrying a passport and a small envelope. He placed them on the table. The passport contained her photograph under a different name. Claire Benton. "There is a car leaving before dawn," he said. "It will take you to Vermont. From there, another driver can cross into Canada." Nora looked at him. "You are letting me leave. I told you I would create a route." Cole said plans change. This one did not. She opened the envelope. It contained cash and a phone. "Will Holloway stop looking for me? No. Will he keep using people like Sam if he believes it brings you back?" Nora closed the passport. "Then running does not end anything. It keeps you alive. It moves the target. This is not your war. It became my war when he used my name." Adrian stepped closer. "You do not understand what staying means. I understand more than I did 2 days ago. You could lose your life. So could everyone protecting me. That is their choice." Nora held up the passport. "And this is mine." She placed it back in his hand. "I am staying until Holloway cannot use me against anyone." Adrian's fingers closed around the document. "Why? Because Sam is alive. Because someone has been watching my home. Because your enemy thinks fear will make me useful." She moved closer. "I do not want him to be right." Adrian looked down at her. "Are you afraid of me?" "Yes." The answer struck him harder than denial would have. Nora continued. "But I am beginning to understand what I should fear. What is that? The part of you that believes caring about someone gives you permission to control them." His voice lowered. "What if I do not know another way, learn?" For one suspended moment, neither moved. The distance between them became smaller without either taking a step. Adrian lifted one hand. He stopped before touching her face. Nora could feel the warmth of his fingers near her skin. His restraint was more intimate than contact. Then an alarm sounded through the estate. Not loud, 3 short tones. Adrian turned immediately. Cole's voice came through the hall speaker. "Security breach in the West Archive." Adrian opened the door. Cole was already approaching with 2 armed guards. "What happened?" Adrian asked. "Someone accessed the original property plans." "Which plans?" Cole's face was grim. "The tunnels beneath the estate." Nora stepped into the hallway. "Who has accessed 6 people?" Cole said. Adrian looked toward the security cameras above them. "Lock every internal door. No one leaves the grounds." Cole pressed a hand to his earpiece and issued the command. Heavy mechanisms began engaging throughout the mansion. Nora looked from one man to the other. "Holloway did not break into your system from outside?" "No," Adrian said. His eyes moved across the long corridor where guards had begun searching rooms one by one. The enemy had not crossed the gates. Someone Adrian trusted had opened a path from within. The realization settled over the corridor more heavily than the storm outside. Adrian stood motionless beneath the security lights, listening as locks engaged throughout the estate. Steel bolts slid into place behind carved wooden doors. Elevators stopped between floors. Guards moved through adjoining halls with weapons drawn. Cole lifted his radio. "Security teams report no breach at the perimeter." "Check the eastern wall again," Adrian said. They already did. "Then check it again." A low vibration passed beneath Nora's feet. She looked toward the windows. "What was that?" No one answered. The vibration came again, stronger this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. Adrian's gaze shifted toward the floor. The tunnels. An explosion tore through the western side of the estate. The sound struck the house like thunder trapped inside stone. Glass shattered somewhere below. The lights died, leaving the corridor in darkness for one breath before the emergency system flooded the walls with red light. Gunfire erupted from the lower floor, not scattered shots, automatic fire. Cole pressed his radio to his ear. "Report." Static answered him. Then a man screamed. Adrian seized Nora's arm. "Back to your room. You said the tunnels were under the West Archive. They connect beneath the entire house." A second explosion shook the windows. Smoke drifted into the corridor from the main staircase. Cole drew his pistol. "I am going to the control room." Adrian looked at the 2 guards beside him. "Take the north stairs. Seal the family wing." One guard nodded. The other hesitated. Adrian saw it. The hesitation lasted less than a second, but it was enough. The guard reached for his weapon. Adrian moved first. He caught the man's wrist and drove him into the wall. The gun discharged into the ceiling. Cole struck the guard behind the knee, forcing him down. Adrian twisted the weapon free. "Who opened the tunnels?" The guard said nothing. Cole pressed the barrel of his pistol beneath the man's jaw. Daniel Cross, the guard, gasped. Adrian went still. Daniel Cross had served the Blackwell family for 27 years. He had stood beside Charles at weddings, funerals, and meetings where men entered as allies and left as enemies. After Charles died, Cross had taught Adrian how to secure the estate. He knew every camera, every lock, every hidden route beneath the cliffs. Cole looked toward Adrian. "I will find him." "No," Adrian said. "You hold the central stairs. That is exactly what he expects. He also expects me to protect the house." Adrian turned to Nora. "I am protecting her." He pulled her toward the eastern corridor. Nora had no time to argue. The hall behind them filled with armed men. Orders moved through the red darkness. Doors slammed. Somewhere below, another burst of gunfire ended abruptly. Adrian led Nora through the private wing, keeping his body between her and every open doorway. The estate she had known as silent and controlled had become a maze of smoke alarms and moving shadows. They reached the gallery overlooking the main foyer. Below them, Blackwell guards fired from behind marble columns. Men in dark tactical clothing moved through the shattered western entrance. A body lay near the staircase. Nora recognized one of the guards who had watched her room. She stopped. Adrian pulled her onward. "Do not look. I know him. You knew his face. He had a name." Adrian's grip tightened. "So do the men shooting at us." 2 attackers appeared at the far end of the gallery. Adrian pushed Nora behind a stone pillar and raised the stolen weapon. The first man fired. Bullets struck the pillar, sending fragments across Nora's hair. Adrian leaned out and fired twice. The first attacker fell. The second moved behind a statue. Adrian waited. The man stepped into view. One shot struck him beneath the collarbone. He collapsed against the railing and disappeared over the edge. Nora pressed both hands against her ears. The noise vanished for a moment, replaced by a high ringing sound. Adrian crouched in front of her. "Look at me." She did. "Can you move?" "Yes. You stay behind me." He pulled her up. They reached the end of the gallery, but the passage toward the emergency bunker was blocked by fire. Flames climbed the curtains and spread across the ceiling. Adrian looked toward the service staircase. A guard ran up from below. "Mr. Blackwell, the South Hall is gone." They entered through the cliff tunnel. "Where is Cross Control Room?" Adrian glanced at Nora. Cole was going there. The guard shook his head. "Mercer is pinned near the main stairs." Adrian lifted his radio. "Cole." Static. "Cole, answer." A burst of gunfire came through the speaker. Then Cole's voice. "I am alive. Cross is in the control room. I know." He cut the internal cameras and opened the tunnel gates. How many inside? At least 15. Maybe more. Nora looked toward the smoke gathering above them. The bunker route passes near the control room. Adrian lowered the radio. "How do you know?" "I saw the original property plans. When yesterday in the archive database, that route was sealed decades ago." "No, the main entrance was sealed. The servants' passage remained open for maintenance." The guard beside them frowned. "There is no servants' passage in the security plans, because those plans were drawn after the renovation." Nora pointed toward the East Archive. The original house had a corridor behind the maritime map room. It connected the gallery to the old cellar. Adrian studied her face. "You are certain number gunfire struck the wall at the far end of the corridor?" Nora looked toward it. "But I am more certain than I am about staying here." Adrian took her hand. They ran. The East Archive was dark when they entered. Shelves rose above them filled with ledgers, maps, and framed documents. Smoke followed through the open door. Adrian secured it behind them with a metal bar. Nora moved along the wall, searching the frames. "Maritime map," she whispered. "Blue coastline. Brass compass in the corner." Adrian watched the door. The handle moved. Someone struck it from the other side. Nora found the map near the rear shelves. She lifted it from its hook. Behind it, the wall appeared solid. Her stomach dropped. There should be a latch. The door shook again. Wood splintered around the lock. Adrian fired once through the panel. A body hit the floor outside. Nora ran her fingers across the stone. Nothing. She closed her eyes and pictured the archival drawing. The passage had been built for servants carrying coal from the cellar. The latch would not have been placed at eye level. She dropped to her knees. Her fingers found a small brass lever beneath the molding. She pulled. A narrow section of shelving released from the wall. Cold air moved through the opening. Adrian stared at her. "You were right. Please sound surprised later." He guided her inside. The hidden corridor was barely wide enough for one person. Old stone pressed close on both sides. Pipes ran above their heads. The only light came from Adrian's phone. Behind them, the archive door broke open. Adrian closed the hidden panel. Darkness swallowed the sound. They moved quickly. The passage descended toward the lower level. Moisture covered the walls. Nora could hear the ocean through the stone, a deep continuous roar beneath the violence above. A faint cry came from behind a metal door. Nora stopped. "Did you hear that Adrian listened?" The cry came again. "Help!" Nora reached for the handle. Adrian caught her wrist. "We do not know who is inside. I know that voice." She pulled the door open. Evelyn Price sat on the floor of a narrow storage room. Blood marked her forehead. A fallen cabinet blocked one leg. Nora knelt beside her. "Mrs. Price." Adrian looked back along the corridor. "We have to move. We cannot leave her. The passage may already be compromised." Nora pushed against the cabinet. It did not move. "Then help me." Adrian's jaw tightened. Another explosion sounded above them. He lowered his weapon and lifted the cabinet enough for Nora to pull Evelyn free. The older woman tried to stand. Her injured leg gave way. Adrian placed one arm around her and carried her through the passage. Nora moved ahead with the phone. The corridor opened into a stone chamber near the old wine cellar. A reinforced door stood at the opposite end. The emergency bunker lay beyond it. Cole's voice came through the radio. "Adrian Cross is moving toward your level." Adrian placed Evelyn against the wall. "Can you hold the stairs not much longer?" The steel door required a palm scan. Adrian pressed his hand against the panel. The light remained red. He tried again. Cross disabled it, Nora said. Adrian struck the control box with the handle of his weapon. The panel sparked. The door released. He pulled it open and guided Evelyn inside. Nora turned at the sound of footsteps behind them. Daniel Cross entered the chamber. He wore a dark tactical coat. Blood covered one sleeve, but his weapon remained steady. Adrian stepped in front of Nora. Cross looked almost sorrowful. "You should have listened to your father." Adrian raised his gun. "My father trusted you. He trusted strength. You opened his house to Holloway. I opened it to change." Cross's eyes moved toward Nora. "This organization survived because no one mattered more than the family. Then she arrived and you moved men, money, and operations to protect a stranger." Adrian's voice became quiet. "She returned what belonged to us. She made you weak." Nora felt Adrian's body go rigid. Cross continued. "You rejected alliances that could have ended this war. You refused Madeline Holloway. Then you placed the entire estate at risk for a woman with no name, no family, and no value to us." Nora saw the moment Adrian decided to fire. Cross saw it too. Both weapons rose. Nora heard one shot. Adrian turned and drove her toward the floor. Pain crossed his face. Blood spread across his left shoulder. Cross aimed again. Cole appeared in the doorway behind him. His shot struck Cross in the chest. Cross fell against the stone wall and slid to the ground. Adrian remained on one knee, his hand pressed to his shoulder. Nora touched his arm. "You are hit." It passed through. Blood moved between his fingers. Cole ran toward them. "Get him inside." Gunfire sounded from the passage. Adrian pushed Nora through the bunker door. Cole dragged Evelyn behind them, then turned to fire down the corridor. Adrian struck the emergency control. The steel door began to close. Cole slipped through at the final second. Bullets struck the outer surface. The door sealed. Silence fell. The bunker was a concrete room lined with monitors, medical supplies, weapons, and emergency food. Several screens showed sections of the estate, though most feeds had gone dark. Adrian leaned against the wall. Nora caught him before he fell. "Sit down. I am fine. You are bleeding through your hand. That does not make the wound serious. It makes you impossible." Cole moved to the communications station. Backup is 7 minutes away. Roads are blocked by snow. Nora pulled the trauma kit from the cabinet. Adrian removed his coat, then struggled with his shirt. She cut the fabric away from his shoulder. The bullet had passed through the upper muscle, leaving a deep wound. Nora pressed gauze against it. Adrian exhaled through clenched teeth. "You can scream," she said. "No, it might improve your personality." Cole looked over. "Do not make him laugh. He may bleed faster." Nora replaced the soaked gauze. Her hands trembled. Adrian noticed. "You found the passage. Do not talk. You saved Evelyn. I said do not talk. You are shaking. Men are dying upstairs. Sam was tortured. Your security chief tried to kill me. You were shot because you moved in front of me. The bullet was coming toward you. That does not make it acceptable." His uninjured hand closed gently around her wrist. "Nora." She looked at him. The coldness in his eyes was gone. "I would do it again." Her throat tightened. "That is what frightens me." Adrian released her wrist and reached into his pocket. He removed the Blackwell ring. Nora stared at it. "The recovery key is gone," he said. "What I transferred the accounts after you returned it. The pattern inside no longer controls anything. So Holloway attacked this house for nothing, for a symbol." Adrian looked at the ring in his palm. "I spent 12 years believing it was the last part of my father I could protect. It was never only metal. No." He lifted the chain Nora wore beneath her sweater. It had belonged to her father and carried a small silver pendant. Adrian opened the clasp and slid the ring onto it. Nora caught his hand. "What are you doing, giving it to someone who understands what it means to carry the dead?" Her eyes filled. "Adrian, my father gave me an empire. You made me wonder whether I wanted one." The bunker monitors flickered. Grant Holloway appeared on the central screen. Cole reached for the controls. Grant smiled. "Good evening, Adrian." Behind him stood the estate control room. 2 Holloway soldiers held rifles near the door. Grant's coat was wet with melted snow. His expression remained calm. "You built a remarkable fortress," he said. It only took one loyal man to open it. Adrian tried to stand. Nora forced him back. Grant continued, I want the ring and the woman. Give me both, and I may allow Mercer to carry you out. Cole leaned closer to the screen. You do not have me. Grant smiled wider. Not yet. The image changed to a security feed showing several men moving toward the bunker corridor. Nora looked at the monitors. One displayed an old maintenance diagram. She recognized the layout. The lower control room sat beside a seawater cistern once used for fire suppression. She moved to the console. What are you doing? Cole asked. The old plans showed emergency valves beneath the western tunnel. That system was abandoned. The pipes were abandoned. The cistern was not. She opened the maintenance controls. A red warning appeared. Cole read it. Manual release will flood the lower corridor. Where are our people? Cole checked the remaining cameras. East stairs and upper gallery. Then no one Blackwell is below the control room. Adrian understood. Holloway's men are. Nora selected the western valve. Grant's face disappeared from the screen as alarms activated beneath the estate. A deep mechanical groan passed through the bunker. Then seawater exploded through the lower tunnel. The cameras showed men losing their footing as black water filled the corridor. Lights burst. Weapons disappeared beneath the current. Grant escaped through the control room door before the flood reached him. The bunker alarm changed. Cole looked at the access panel. Someone is entering the outer chamber. Adrian stood. Nora caught his arm. You can barely move. He came for me. He came for the ring. Adrian looked at the chain around her neck. No. He came to prove I could lose what my father lost. He lifted his weapon. Cole opened the bunker door. Grant stood in the flooded chamber alone and breathing hard. His gun was raised. You always were your father's son, Grant said. Adrian stepped forward. My father died believing there was still something worth saving. Grant smiled. And you will die for the same reason. He fired. Nora struck the emergency barrier control. A steel panel dropped between them. The bullet hit the descending metal and changed direction, striking the wall. Adrian moved around the edge before the barrier sealed completely. He drove Grant against the stone. The gun fell. Grant struck Adrian's wounded shoulder. Adrian staggered but remained standing. They fought in the freezing water. Grant reached for a knife. Adrian caught his arm and forced him down. Within seconds, Adrian held the blade against Grant's throat. Grant looked up at him. Do it. Adrian's breathing was ragged. Nora stood behind the barrier watching. Grant smiled through blood. Show her what you are. Adrian looked toward Nora. Then he removed the knife. Cole. Cole stepped forward and restrained Grant. Grant's smile vanished. Adrian looked down at him. You do not get to become another ghost in this house. Cole pulled Grant toward the bunker. The authorities will bury him. Not after every account officer and judge on his payroll reaches 3 federal agencies and the press at the same time. Grant struggled. Adrian did not look back. The fighting above them had begun to fade. Blackwell reinforcements entered through the main gates. Wounded men called for medics. Fire suppression systems hissed through the damaged halls. Nora approached Adrian. Blood had soaked the bandage around his shoulder. The ring rested against her chest. You gave me this while you were losing blood. I was not thinking clearly. Do you want it back? Adrian looked at the ring, then at her. No. Nora placed one hand against his face. He became completely still. She kissed him. There was no violence in it. No demand. Only the shaking release of fear held too long. Adrian's uninjured arm moved around her waist, but he did not pull her closer until she stepped into him. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. Outside the broken windows, the storm weakened. Pale morning light spread across the Atlantic and entered the ruined house through smoke and falling snow. For the first time since Nora had crossed the Blackwell gates, every door stood open. Cold air moved through the ruined western hall, carrying the smell of salt smoke and wet stone. Snow had blown across the marble floor through shattered windows. It melted beneath the boots of medics and armed men moving from room to room. The estate no longer looked untouchable. One side of the gallery had collapsed. Smoke darkened the ceiling above the main staircase. Broken glass covered the floor where Adrian had once walked through his house as if nothing in the world could enter without his permission. Now wounded guards sat beneath family portraits while doctors cut through blood-soaked clothing. Nora stood near the bunker entrance with Adrian's ring resting against her chest. Adrian leaned heavily against the stone wall. His face had lost color. Blood continued to spread beneath the bandage around his shoulder, though he seemed determined to ignore it. A medic approached with a stretcher. Adrian looked at it. No. The medic hesitated. Cole stepped beside him. That was not a question. I can walk. You almost fell 3 minutes ago. I slipped. You were standing still. Adrian gave him a cold look. Cole did not move. Nora placed one hand against Adrian's uninjured arm. Get on the stretcher. His attention shifted to her. I am not being carried out of my own house. You were shot inside your own house. Pride has already lost this argument. The medic lowered his eyes, trying to hide a reaction. Adrian noticed. Say something he told the man, and you will spend the next year working nights in a warehouse. The medic nodded. Yes, sir. Nora looked at Adrian. On the stretcher. For several seconds he remained still. Then he sat. Cole stared at Nora as the medics lifted Adrian. I have been trying to make him listen for 15 years. You sound tired. I am exhausted. The medics carried Adrian toward the main hall. He watched Nora over the edge of the stretcher. Stay with Cole. I am coming with you. There are still rooms being cleared. That is why I am coming with you. Adrian looked as though he wanted to argue. The pain in his shoulder ended the discussion before it began. Outside, the storm had weakened to a fine mist of snow. Emergency vehicles waited beyond the front steps. None carried official city markings. Adrian's people had called private medical teams, private fire crews, and attorneys before anyone contacted the authorities. The Blackwell organization had survived for generations by controlling what entered the public record. That morning, control was already slipping. The explosion near the cliffs had been heard from the neighboring properties. Smoke rose high enough to be seen from the coastal highway. Several residents had called emergency services before the estate could block the signals. Sirens approached from beyond the gates. Cole walked beside Nora as Adrian was placed into an armored medical vehicle. We have 7 minutes before the first local officers arrive. What happens then? They ask questions. And what do you tell them? That a security system malfunction caused an explosion. Nora looked toward the bodies being covered near the western entrance. They will believe that Number Cole opened the vehicle door. They will understand that belief is not required. Nora climbed in beside Adrian. The doors closed. Inside, a doctor cut away the temporary bandage and examined the wound. Adrian watched Nora instead of the instruments. She sat opposite him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Dried blood covered her fingers. His blood. He reached toward her. The movement made him wince. Nora caught his hand. Stop moving. I am making sure you are real. You can do that without reopening your shoulder. His thumb passed once across her knuckles. Then the doctor pushed a needle into Adrian's arm. His eyes narrowed. What is that pain medication? I did not approve it. You are not approving anything for the next several minutes. Adrian looked toward Nora. Did you arrange this? I wish I had. The doctor taped the needle in place. I have been treating Blackwell men since before you inherited the organization. Your father complained less. Adrian's expression turned dark. My father was unconscious most of the time you treated him. That may explain it. Nora almost laughed. The sound stopped in her throat when Adrian's eyes began to close. His grip remained around her hand. Do not leave, he said. It was quiet enough that the doctor pretended not to hear. Nora tightened her fingers around his. I am here. Adrian looked at her for another second. Then the medication pulled him into sleep. The vehicle crossed the estate grounds and entered a private road leading toward a medical clinic outside Salem. Nora stayed beside him the entire way. She did not release his hand until the doctors took him into surgery. The clinic occupied a restored brick building hidden behind a line of pine trees. It had no name on the entrance and no signs near the road. The waiting room was quiet, elegant, and nearly empty. Cole arrived 20 minutes later with blood on his collar. Nora stood when she saw him. Are you hurt? Not mine. He sat across from her and rubbed both hands over his face. For the first time since she had met him, he looked older than his years. How many, Nora asked. Cole understood. 7 Blackwell men dead, 14 injured. 2 are still in surgery. And Holloway's people 11 dead. 9 in custody. 3 missing. What about Grant locked in a room downstairs with 2 guards who have no reason to like him? Nora sat slowly. And Evelyn fractured ankle. 6 stitches. She threatened the doctor with a cane because he cut her dress. Relief softened Nora's face. Cole leaned back. Cross is dead. Nora looked down at her hands. He thought Adrian had become weak. He thought Adrian had become different. Is that the same thing in your world? Cole considered the question. Sometimes. The waiting room clock moved through an hour. Neither of them spoke for a while. Nora watched snow gather along the edges of the windows. I kissed him, she said. Cole looked at her. I was there, I know. I tried not to watch. You failed. I was restraining a man in freezing water. My options were limited. Nora lowered her eyes. Cole studied her carefully. You do not regret it? It was not a question. No. Do you understand what that means? Nora looked toward the closed surgery doors. I understand what it means to me. That may not be enough. She met his gaze. Cole continued. Adrian does not know how to do anything halfway. He does not trust slowly. He does not protect carefully. Once he decides someone matters, he rearranges the world around them. I noticed. He paid your debt. I noticed that too. You were angry. I am still angry. Cole nodded. Good. Nora frowned. You sound pleased. I do not need another person who says yes to him. You thought I was a spy 2 days ago. I still think you make terrible decisions. I found the ring. You entered a Mafia estate alone. I returned stolen property. You refused a passport to Canada. I had reasons. You walked through a burning house because an old floor plan suggested there might be a hidden corridor. There was. Cole exhaled. That does not make the decision less terrible. A doctor entered the waiting room. Nora rose immediately. The doctor removed his glasses. The bullet passed through the upper shoulder without striking bone or the main artery. There was muscle damage and significant blood loss, but he will recover. Nora's knees weakened with relief. Cole stood beside her. When can we see him? He is awake. Adrian was in a private room at the end of the second floor. Nora entered before Cole. He lay beneath white sheets with his left shoulder heavily bandaged. An intravenous line ran into his right arm. His face remained pale, but his eyes were clear. They moved immediately to the ring at Nora's throat. You kept it. Nora closed the door behind her. You were unconscious for 2 hours. That was not an answer. She sat beside the bed. Yes, I kept it. His gaze lifted to her face. You stayed. I said I would. Adrian reached for her hand. This time she allowed him to take it. You should sleep, she said. I did. That was anesthesia. It was still unpleasant. You threatened the doctor before he treated you. He criticized my father. He said your father complained less. Exactly. Nora shook her head. Adrian watched her for several seconds. The quiet between them felt different from the silence inside the estate. There were no alarms, no gunfire, no men waiting outside the door for orders. Only the steady sound of medical equipment and snow touching the window. Grant is alive, Adrian said. I know. You stopped me from killing him. I lowered a barrier. You were watching when I put the knife to his throat. Yes. Were you afraid? Nora considered lying. She did not. Yes, of him, of you. Adrian's hand loosened around hers. Nora held on. I knew he deserved to answer for what he did. I also knew killing him in that corridor would stay with you longer than it stayed with him. You think prison will hold him? I think evidence will. You have a generous opinion of the legal system. No. I have a practical opinion of public humiliation. Men like Grant fear losing power more than they fear dying. Adrian looked toward the ceiling. My father would have killed him. You are not your father. His eyes returned to her. For most of his life, those words would have sounded like an accusation. From Nora, they did not. Cole entered without knocking. Adrian's expression hardened. Have doors become decorative? You are in a clinic. I am still entitled to privacy. You were nearly dead 40 minutes ago. I was sleeping. Cole looked at Nora. He is I can see that. Cole placed a folder on the table beside the bed. We have a problem. Adrian's attention sharpened. What the local police are at the estate. State investigators are coming. Someone leaked the original emergency call. Cross possibly. We also found copies of Blackwell financial records in the control room. Holloway planned to take the ring, kill you, then release enough information to collapse every legitimate company attached to the family. Adrian tried to sit higher. Pain moved across his face. Nora pressed one hand against his chest. "Stay down." Cole continued as though the interruption were ordinary. "The reserve pattern is gone, but several names remain exposed." "How many?" 16 officials. 4 judges, 2 federal agents. Nora looked between them. "Paid officials." Cole did not answer. Adrian did. "Yes." The word changed the air in the room. Nora had always known what Adrian was. She had seen the weapons, the blood, and the men who obeyed him. Still, hearing the structure of his power stated so plainly made it harder to separate the man in the hospital bed from the organization built around him. Adrian watched her reaction. "Leave us," he told Cole. Cole looked at Nora, then returned his attention to Adrian. "You need to decide quickly." "I will." When the door closed, Nora stood and walked toward the window. Adrian remained silent. She could feel him watching her. "You paid judges," she said. "Yes, you paid police officers, yes, to do what, sometimes to look away, and other times to make problems disappear." Nora turned. "What kind of problems?" His expression became guarded. "The kind created by men who work for me." "That does not answer me." "No." She crossed her arms. "Then answer." Adrian looked down at the sheets. For the first time, the hesitation did not come from strategy. It came from shame, cargo theft, illegal weapons, assaults, extortion. Nora's stomach tightened. "People were hurt." "Yes. And you protected the men who hurt them. Sometimes." The word landed harder than denial. Nora looked away. Adrian's voice remained quiet. "You told me that caring about someone does not give me permission to control them. What does that have to do with this everything?" He tried to lift himself again. This time Nora did not stop him. Adrian sat against the raised bed. "My father built an organization that survived because every man beneath him believed the family would protect him. Guilt did not matter. Loyalty did." "That is not protection." "I know." Nora looked at him. The admission seemed to cost him more than the wound. "What are you going to do? Release the records?" Her eyes narrowed. "To whom federal investigators, state prosecutors, and 3 newspapers. That exposes your own people." "Yes, it exposes you." "Yes." Nora stared at him. "Why?" "Because Holloway planned to use the files as a weapon. If I release them first, no one controls the story. That sounds like strategy." "It is." "And the rest?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "The rest is that you were right." Nora said nothing. He continued. "I have spent years calling control protection. I paid men to erase consequences, then called their loyalty family. Cross believed that was strength because I taught him to believe it. You did not make him open the tunnels, no. But I built the house he thought he was defending." The monitor beside the bed measured his heart in steady green lines. Nora moved back toward him. "Releasing those files will not undo what happened. I know, it may destroy your organization. Then it was already waiting to be destroyed." She sat beside him. "Cole will fight you. He will argue. Your captains may turn against you. Some will. You could lose everything." Adrian's eyes moved to the ring against her chest. "Not everything." Nora held his gaze. She wanted to believe the words. She also knew belief was not the same as trust. Trust required time outside a bunker, time without blood on the floor, time in which Adrian chose differently when fear was not forcing him to. "You need to make that decision because it is yours," she said, "not because you think it will make me stay." His face became still. "Are you leaving?" The question carried no command, only fear. Nora took a slow breath. "I do not know." Adrian looked away. She had expected anger. Instead, he nodded once. That acceptance hurt more. The investigation began before noon. Blackwell attorneys delivered copies of the Holloway records to federal offices in Boston, New York, and Washington. Identical files went to 2 national newspapers and a local investigative reporter who had spent years trying to connect the Holloway family to organized crime. Grant Holloway's name appeared beside shipping fraud, weapons purchases, extortion, and the bribery of public officials. The files also contained Blackwell names. Adrian did not remove them. By evening, reporters surrounded the gates of the Marblehead estate. The first arrests began the following morning. 2 police officers were taken from their homes before sunrise. A Superior Court judge resigned before investigators reached his office. One federal agent attempted to cross into Canada and was stopped near the border. Grant Holloway was transferred under armed guard to a federal detention facility. He left the private clinic in handcuffs. Nora watched from a second-floor window as he was placed inside a dark vehicle. He looked up. Even from a distance, his gaze found her. There was no smile now, no promise of revenge, only hatred stripped of power. Adrian stood behind her, his injured arm secured against his chest. "You should not be near the window. He is leaving. He can still see you. Let him." Adrian moved beside her. Grant disappeared into the vehicle. The convoy pulled away. Nora touched the ring beneath her sweater. "Is it over now?" She looked at him. He continued. "Wars like this do not end in one morning. Men will choose sides. Some accounts will disappear. Some people will try to rebuild what Holloway lost. You could have lied. Yes, thank you for not doing it." Adrian looked through the glass. "I am trying to learn." The estate remained closed for 3 weeks. Engineers repaired the damaged walls. Investigators searched the tunnels. Blackwell men carried furniture from burned rooms while insurance representatives took photographs. No one believed would ever explain the truth. Evelyn returned from the clinic with a silver cane and no patience for anyone who suggested rest. She supervised the reconstruction from a chair in the main hall. When a contractor placed a damaged portrait against the wrong wall, she struck the floor with the cane. Charles Blackwell survived 40 years of criminals. He will not be defeated by poor lighting. Nora smiled for the first time in days. Adrian watched from the staircase. He had returned to the estate against medical advice. His shoulder remained immobilized, and he moved more slowly than before. The wound frustrated him less than the orders he could no longer give without resistance. Cole challenged nearly every decision. Several captains resigned. 2 disappeared before investigators could question them. Adrian froze the accounts of both men and sent their financial records to prosecutors. The old organization began to fracture. Nora saw the cost in his face. He spent nights in the study reviewing files and days meeting lawyers, company directors, and families of men killed during the attack. He paid for every funeral. He also met privately with the widows. No guards entered those rooms. When he emerged, his expression was always colder. One evening, Nora found him standing in the ruined chapel. The memorial plaque for Charles had survived, but one stained glass window had shattered. Plywood covered the opening. Adrian held a folder in his right hand. "What is that?" Nora asked. "Statements from the families. Which families people harmed by Blackwell men?" Nora stopped several feet away. Adrian placed the folder on the altar. "There are more than I expected. Did you expect none? No." The answer was honest enough to hurt. He touched the edge of the altar. "My father used to say that power reveals who a man is." "What did it reveal about you?" Adrian looked at the covered window. "That I became very skilled at not looking." Nora moved beside him. "Looking is not the same as changing. I know. What are you changing?" He handed her another document. It contained the names of several Blackwell companies: shipping, construction, commercial real estate, private security. Beside them were the names of illegal operations being closed or transferred to investigators: weapons routes, protection payments, stolen cargo networks. Nora read every line. "You are dismantling half the organization, more than half. What happens to the men who depend on it? The ones who can work legally will be offered positions. The others can leave, and if they refuse, they will." "That was not my question." Adrian met her eyes. "If they threaten you, Cole Evelyn, or anyone inside this house, I will respond. With violence, if necessary." Nora looked down at the document. He had not become harmless. She had never asked him to. She only needed to know that violence was no longer the first language he chose. Adrian continued, "I cannot become someone who has never done these things. No. I cannot promise I will never do them again. No. I can decide what I protect." Nora folded the document. "And who gets to make their own choices?" His gaze moved toward her. "Yes." The word remained between them. 3 days later, Adrian entered Nora's room carrying a wooden box. She was packing. He stopped in the doorway. Her clothes lay folded on the bed. Books filled one small suitcase. The framed photograph of her father rested beside her coat. Adrian did not ask what she was doing. He already knew. Nora closed the suitcase. "The roads are clear." "Yes," Sam has been moved to a safe apartment. Yes. Holloway is in federal custody. Yes. Adrian placed the box on the table. Inside were her phone car keys, apartment keys, and several documents. Nora lifted the first page. The claim against her father's house had been permanently removed. The payment Adrian made remained in place, but the document identified it as a gift with no obligation, legal interest, or condition. A second paper listed every action Blackwell employees had taken in her name: her apartment search, her archive records, her medical history, the false passport, the accounts used to monitor threats against her. At the bottom was Adrian's signature. Nora looked up. "What is this? Everything I should have told you before I did it." She read the final page. It stated that Nora Bennett owed no financial, personal, or professional obligation to Adrian Blackwell or any Blackwell company. It also authorized the destruction of every copy of her private records. You had this written by a lawyer. 4 lawyers. Why 4? The first 3 tried to include security conditions, and the 4th understood the instruction. Nora placed the papers back inside the box. Adrian stood very still. "The gates are open," he said. "Are you asking me to leave? No. Are you ordering me to stay?" His jaw tightened. "No." The answer came quietly. For a man accustomed to command, it sounded like surrender. Nora removed the ring from beneath her sweater. She held the chain between them. Adrian looked at it but did not reach for it. "I cannot know what I feel while I am living in your house, surrounded by your guards, with my debt gone because you decided it should be. I understand. I need my work. You have it. I need my home. It is yours. I need to know that when I choose you, I am choosing a man. Not safety, not power, not gratitude." Adrian's face revealed nothing. His eyes did. "Do you choose me now?" Nora's throat tightened. "I do not know." He nodded. She removed the ring from the chain and placed it in his palm. His fingers closed around it. Nora expected him to ask her to reconsider. He did not. He lifted her suitcase with his uninjured hand. She looked at him. "You should not carry that. I was shot in the other shoulder. That is not how recovery works. It is how luggage works." He carried the suitcase downstairs. No guards followed them. Evelyn waited near the front entrance with her cane. She embraced Nora without asking permission. "You will call me." Nora smiled. "Yes." That was not a question. Cole stood beside the open doors. He handed Nora her car keys. "The engine has been repaired. My engine was fine. Your engine sounded like a metal cabinet falling downstairs. It had character. It had no oil." Nora looked toward Adrian. "You repaired my car." He shook his head. "Cole did." Cole frowned. "You told me to." Adrian's expression remained calm. "Nora asked me not to make decisions about her property." Cole looked between them. "This new honesty is going to become exhausting." Nora walked outside. Her blue sedan waited at the base of the steps. It had been cleaned, though a dent remained in the rear door. Adrian placed her suitcase in the trunk. Snow no longer covered the grounds. Water moved down the drive in narrow streams carrying winter toward the sea. Nora stood beside the open driver's door. Adrian remained several feet away. "You are not going to tell me to call when I arrive. I assumed you would. You are not going to send someone behind me, no. You want to, yes." Nora almost smiled. "Do not. I will not." She entered the car. Adrian closed the door. For several seconds, neither looked away. Then Nora started the engine and drove toward the gates. They remained open as she passed through. In the mirror, Adrian stood alone at the top of the drive. He did not move until the road curved and the estate disappeared. South Boston felt smaller than Nora remembered. Her apartment had been cleaned after the search. New locks had been installed. Her books stood where she had left them, though she could tell someone had replaced a broken shelf. She slept for 13 hours. The following morning she returned to Bell and Finch. Martin met her near the archive entrance. He looked from her face to the healing cut near her hairline. "Family emergency. It became complicated. I saw the news." Nora removed her coat. "You saw a gas explosion. I saw 3 federal vehicles outside Adrian Blackwell's estate." She looked at him. Martin raised both hands. "I prefer the gas explosion." Nora returned to her desk. The communion cup from Salem still waited beneath the lamp. She sat down, adjusted the magnifying lens, and continued the report she had begun before finding the ring. The work felt ordinary. That was what she needed. Days became weeks. Nora restored her father's house and rented it to a young family who had recently moved to Boston. She used part of her salary to create a payment plan repaying the trust that had cleared the debt, even though Adrian's lawyers repeatedly returned the money. After the third attempt, she received a handwritten note. "Stop trying to repay me." Nora wrote beneath it, "Stop trying to control how I spend my money." The following week, a second note arrived. "I am considering your argument." She kept both notes inside her desk. Adrian did not appear at her apartment. He did not enter the archive. He called once every Sunday evening. Sometimes they spoke for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. He told her about the legal companies being separated from the Blackwell accounts. She told him about an auction house attempting to pass a 19th century replica as a colonial original. He asked whether she was sleeping. She asked whether he was attending physical therapy. He lied. She knew. On the fourth Sunday, Nora heard Cole in the background. He skipped twice, Cole said. Adrian covered the phone. Nora could still hear them arguing. She smiled into the quiet of her apartment. 3 months after the attack, Bell and Finch received a contract to authenticate objects for a restored maritime museum near Boston Harbor. Nora spent 6 weeks preparing the opening exhibition. The central collection focused on family crests, hidden inscriptions, and personal objects carried through generations. She placed one empty case near the center of the gallery. Its label read, "Private Signet Ring, Current Location Unknown." Martin read it twice. "Is that a joke? No. Will anyone understand it? One person." The museum opened on a cold Friday evening. Guests moved through the gallery beneath warm lights. Glass cases reflected old coins, seals, letters, and silver instruments once carried by sailors crossing the Atlantic. Nora stood near the entrance speaking with the curator when the room became slightly quieter. She did not need to turn immediately. She felt him. Adrian stood beneath an archway at the far end of the gallery. He wore a dark suit without a tie. His shoulder had healed, though he still moved carefully when turning. No guards surrounded him. Cole was nowhere in sight. Adrian looked uncomfortable among ordinary guests. That made Nora smile. She excused herself from the curator and crossed the gallery. "You came. You invited me. I sent an email to 200 people. I read it 17 times. Why, you did not include a personal message. It was an invitation. It said admission was free from 6 until 9. That was important information." Adrian looked at the displays. "You did this with several people who enjoy being credited. It is beautiful." Nora studied him. "You came alone. Cole is across the street. That is not alone. He agreed to remain outside." After an argument, they walked toward the empty display case. Adrian stopped when he read the label. "Current location unknown." Nora folded her hands behind her back. "It was accurate when I wrote it." Adrian reached into his coat. The Blackwell ring rested in his palm. He had not been wearing it. Nora looked at him. "You kept it in your pocket." "For 3 months. Why wearing it felt like repeating a decision I had not examined." And now Adrian looked toward the crest carved into the dark stone. "My father gave me this as an inheritance. For years I thought that meant the organization, the money, and the responsibility to protect the Blackwell name." Nora waited. "I do not want you to inherit my war." He placed the ring in her palm. The metal was warm from his hand. Nora closed her fingers around it. "What do you want? A future I have not earned yet?" "That sounds almost humble. I am recovering from a gunshot. That was 3 months ago. It was serious. You threatened the doctor. He insulted my father." Nora laughed. The sound stopped Adrian completely. He looked at her as if he had never heard it without fear nearby. She opened her hand. The ring rested beneath the gallery lights. "I am not wearing this as a promise to become part of your organization. I know. I am not accepting your money. I know. I will not move into your estate." Adrian paused. "I know." You hesitated. "The house is large. That is not persuasive. I have improved the locks." Nora raised an eyebrow. Adrian corrected himself. "The doors open from both sides." "That is slightly better." Guests moved around them, unaware that the object in Nora's hand had once caused bloodshed across Boston. Adrian took a breath. "Will you have dinner with me?" Nora looked at him. You rejected every woman in Boston, and that is the invitation you prepared. I have never invited one before. Then try again. Adrian stepped closer. He did not touch her. Nora Bennett, will you have dinner with me, because I have spent 3 months discovering that silence is unbearable after hearing your voice. She studied him. That was better. Is that a yes? It is dinner. A real smile appeared on Adrian's face. It changed him more than the absence of the ring. Nora opened the clasp of the chain around her neck and slid the signet onto it. Adrian watched her. You said it was not a promise. It is not. What is it? She let the ring rest beside her father's silver pendant. A second conversation. Adrian offered his hand. Nora looked at it. The scars across his knuckles remained. So did the faint line where the ring had rested for years. She placed her hand in his. They walked through the museum together. No one bowed. No one moved out of Adrian's path. A child ran between them and nearly stepped on his shoe. Adrian stopped surprised while the child's mother apologized. Nora continued walking. Adrian caught up. You left me. You survived. I was attacked. By a 6-year-old. He was moving quickly. She smiled again. They reached the final gallery where tall windows overlooked Boston Harbor. The water was calm. Lights from the city moved across its surface. Somewhere beyond the glass stood the hotel where Adrian had lost the ring. Somewhere beneath the streets were the tunnels Holloway had used to reach his home. Behind them, inside the museum, the ring no longer sat in a locked case or on the hand of a man defending an empire. It rested beside the memory of Nora's father. Adrian looked at it. Do you still think I am dangerous? Yes. He accepted the answer. Do you still fear me sometimes? His gaze moved toward the harbor. And you are still here. Nora tightened her hand around his. I am here because I can leave. Adrian looked at her. The words settled into the quiet space between them. No locked study, no armed guards, no storm sealing the roads. Only a choice. He lifted her hand to his lips. The gesture was careful. Nora stepped closer. Outside, the harbor lights trembled across the black water. Adrian had spent his entire life protecting the ring because it was the last piece of his father he could hold. In the end, it had led him to the first person who asked him to release his grip. Nora rested her head against his shoulder, careful of the healing wound. Adrian looked through the museum glass at the city he once believed could be ruled only through fear. Then he turned away from it and walked beside her.